This week, team, we're going across the ditch, as we often do, and we're speaking to a lovely bloke by the name of Tony Meredith, and he's in a very hot, sticky Brisbane. Tony, how are you?
Since I'm well, mate, thank you for having me here. And no, doing well. I'm very excited to our conversation today.
Awesome. So obviously we have lots and lots of different trainers, whether they're in Australia or they're in America or UK, come on the show to teach our rural guys something. So you specialize in training small to medium businesses. Forgive me, maybe more city-based, more sort of commercially based, not out like we're talking a Chuka or Bendigo or Gundawindi or Gunnedah. I mean, great places, but you probably found yourself more city-based than country. Would that be fair?
Yeah, absolutely. So more metropolitan. With that being the case, so for example, in Queensland, I've got clients all the way up the coast. So whether it be in Proserpine, whether it be up in Cairns as well, I was doing some Zoom calls with my clients in Cairns. So it's not just in the big smoke, but no, it does tend to be more metropolitan based.
Brilliant. So we can learn so much from you guys. And then, because that's what we're all doing, our listeners are learners, and learners are earners and all those good things. So, Tony, tell me, I'm going to ask you this first question. What makes a great salesperson?
A great salesperson, first you've got to have the right mindset. So that's a big thing. Got to have a growth mindset. And then also it's about, to me, two things. One is asking amazing questions and two is listening, so they're more from the skill side of things. And then with the mindset, it's about just keep going, be consistent, be persistent. You don't have to be, a superstar one day and not the next. It's just about, I call it the tortoise and the hare, St. John. It's that slow and steady, slow and steady, slow and steady. And typically in my years of doing this in this capacity, but then also as an employee, it was those that were just consistent and persistent with what they did. They were the most successful.
Yeah, I love that. And there's a lot to uncover there just by that sort of experience. I always say consistency will beat intensity, right? That hiss and roar and I'm going to get out there and then they don't do the cool cycles and they don't follow up. And then you used another word, which I was listening to carefully, which is around. So hopefully I was showing some active listening there. Well, you didn't say insistence, you said persistence, because there's a difference between the two, isn't there?
Yeah, and so it's about just not giving up. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Quite often in sales, as you know, we don't always get a yes on that first time we speak to someone. It's about keep persisting, keep going, because it's through that consistency, through that persistency that you end up, winning the business. Someone may not be ready for your services or your products today or tomorrow, but perhaps through persistence, they're ready in a month or two's time. Had you have not been persistent, then you'd never know. And so that whole persistency, focusing on your process, not getting too caught up in the emotional side of will they buy from me, won't they buy from me? It's just I've got a process, I'm just going to keep going, and then when they're ready, they will purchase.
Now, it's easy for you and I to say this because you and I have been doing this for a wee while. Say for a younger man or woman that was starting out and they hear this and they listen to this podcast and go, yeah, but this is my first sales job. Let's unpack a few things that you just said here, because the mindset, I think where you're coming from, and I resonate with that heavily, is I know that and you know that because that's a lived experience. That's what you and I have both done. Like, we know that we've done deals. If we hadn't been persistent and purposeful and professional and polite in our follow-up, and we mix up the medians in our follow-up and all those good things, we wouldn't get the deals done that we've got and work with the clients that we have. But where do you think, I've got the answer, but it's not, this show isn't about me, it's about my guests, right? What do you think where that persistence and that belief and that mindset actually comes from? Because a lot of people aren't made for this stuff. It's tough.
So firstly, have a goal. So what are your goals? What's the things that you're actually aiming for? As opposed to getting up every day, are you working towards something? So have a goal, have a purpose, have a reason behind what that goal is. Is it to develop a career? Is it to go and do what you and I have done and go and launch beyond being an employee and start our own businesses? But really understand what's the thing that's in front of me, because it gets difficult some days, and you don't feel like bounding out of bed and you've just been rejected call after call after call. And so having a bigger reason in front of you is a thing that will, drive you, encourage you, perhaps pull you towards it.
And we talked about goals, and then there's monetary goals, and then if you read Gang Pink and drive and mastery and autonomy and purpose and those things, but it's also maybe about the meaning, perhaps, like what you're selling. Should we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely. Well, that's the purpose side of things. So, what is the reason? The reason, and Simon Sinek, I'm not sure if your viewers know, but he talks about the power of why. And what is the reason that we want to go and do the thing after all? And it's not money. Like, I understand that money is important. It makes the world go round. It provides us choices. But is that really the reason? There's a deeper reason, I would suggest. And so, what is that reason? Why do I want to bound out of bed and go and speak to a prospect, even though yesterday I may have had a day full of no's? There's got to be a deeper reason. Otherwise, we won't do it.
yeah. So say you're, let's stick with someone who's
Yep.
maybe on their first or second sales job, because again, it's not fair for us because we've been doing this like
Yep.
30 years, right? So you're sort of like, we're saying, got to have goals, got to have purpose, got to have a why,
Hmm.
got to believe in your product. A lot of my guys are probably selling a product that is perceived at least as a commodity.
Yep.
What advice would you have to them for that?
So from a commodity point of view, it's how else can I, create that point of difference? If it's the same as the person down the road, is there a point of difference with what it is that I'm doing? Maybe the point of difference is me, right?
Uh,
So whilst the product might be the same, but is there something different that I can do? And go back to the persistence and consistency. Maybe I'm more persistent than the guy or the gal down the road if there's a commodity, involved. So I've been involved in selling commodities in my life, and it's about I can't control the product that I'm selling. Like, that is the product that I'm selling. What I can control are the things that sit within me, and that is how I show up, how often I show up, the attitude, the enthusiasm that I show, my ability to build rapport, ask questions, listen, etc. They are all the things that
mm.
are 100% in my control. The fact that something's a commodity, well, that just happens to be the product that I'm selling at this point in time.
Yeah, oh, that's such good advice around, because I often say to people, what's the most important part of the sales process? And they say it's the product or the customer. I said, well, hold on, it's you. Often it's you, because you're the point, you're, as I say, you're the thing that's actually different, and how you turn up, how you show up, how you serve, your intent, your attention to detail, your specificity, your relevancy, all these things come into account, don't they?
Well, people do business with people.
Yeah.
That's what it is. We build rapport, or perhaps we don't build rapport
Mm.
with the people. So it's about what can I do to differentiate myself from the person down the road.
Mm. So what's some of the advice you've got or give to people when they are selling what's perceived as a, commodity product? You've obviously done that in your career. Like, what were some of the things that you did that made you different, that got deals done, when you're like, oh God, it's just the same, and all my guys are just interested in price. That's all they want. They just want to price me. They teach me, they treat me exactly the same as every other bloody rep that phones them or calls on them. What did you do that was different?
Yeah, so one of the things that I focused on is the pull through. So from a B2B environment in selling, it's about how can I help my customer pull that stock through, because they don't actually make any money if they buy from me and it just sits on their shelf or sits in their warehouse. So, how do I help them pull that stock through? Because when they pull that stock through, that they actually make all the profits. That's about going above and beyond, in the sense of, I'm just not here to flog your product. I'm here to sell your product, but I'm also here to help you pull that stock through. Perhaps it might be merchandise it in a particular way, might be advertise it, promote it in a particular way. But either way, I want to pull that stock through for you so you actually make the profit, you make the money, and then you replenish and buy some more.
Yeah. So what do you think about this know, like, and trust sort of thing that gets trotted out all the time? What do you think of that?
Well, I'm a massive believer in it.
Cool.
So I'm heavily involved in networking here in Brisbane and beyond. And I think it's so essential, from a trust point of view. It's about, I want to do business with someone who I trust. So first I want to get to know them. Then,
Mm.
yes, we want to like them, build that rapport, build the relationship side of things. But then I want to go and trust that person. When we have trust, then we go and do business. And I know that at some stage, today we're going to talk about leadership as well as sales. But I mean, from a leadership point of view, the reason why a lot of leaders don't allow their team to do the things that they should be doing, i.e. to delegate, is because they don't trust them. And it's not that they are untrustworthy people. It's just that they don't believe that they can do that thing. So I'm going to step in as a leader. So trust is critical.
Yeah. And we're going to get into the leadership thing, because
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah.
fascinated by that. And thank you for prompting me on that. I've got this hypothesis.
Sure.
I'll see what you think. And it's something I've believed in for quite a long time. It's very hard to trust someone And you can talk about this personally or professionally in both
Mhm,
contexts,
mhm.
if you don't feel safe with that person.
Of course.
Because people don't feel safe with salespeople, do they?
Look, well, so perhaps initially,
Most of them.
initially because it's a salesperson. They're here to flog me some stuff that perhaps I don't want, and that's where through time, it's through building of the relationship. But beyond the relationship, I'm very big on building of the partnership. So there's plenty of ways to go and build a relationship. We can go to a sporting event and all that sort of stuff. But in 2025, for me, it goes beyond that. It's about how do I go and build a partnership where we walk hand in hand down the road. And my role as a salesperson is to help you, Mr. or Mrs. Business owner, to have phenomenal success with this particular product that I'm selling.
Mm. So what are the objections that I get objections, I still actively sell. It's not like they magically disappear, although, asking the right questions helps.
Hmm.
But like for you, Tony, what are the objections that you face when you've got these ma and pa or mum and dad businesses or even bigger businesses like your Jim's Mate, which is a huge franchise and all the stuff that you do with them? What are the objections they first have with you, perhaps as a sales trainer, and how do you overcome them? Because often they will treat you maybe the same way that their salespeople are treated. They think you're all the same. What do
Yeah,
you?
so, well, I mean, price is the obvious one, St. John, so that happens all the time. And so for me, how do I overcome that? It's all about the amplification of value, and it's about starting to highlight the impact, the positive impact that we can make on their business. So as an example, one of my larger clients in the last financial year, it ended at 30 June, they grew their business by 67%. Now, to give you some context, that was in excess of $4 million in sales growth. Right. So then when I compare that back to my measly fee to go in there and help them to grow their business, it pales into insignificance compared to the upside. So
Mm,
absolutely there is a price, an expense piece. My job is to see myself as an investment, not an expense. If I'm an expense, well, then, I can be dispensed. If I'm an investment, then I want to make sure that I'm sticking around with my with my clients as long as I possibly can.
yeah, well, great result that one. What's I know you can't mention names for commercial sensitivity. What's one of the biggest sort of training interventions you've been most proud of in your
Well, well,
career?
well, well, certainly that one is a huge
Mm,
one. I've been involved in a number of big franchise groups. I started with a franchise group. Then when they were at 12, they're now nudging 100. Other franchise groups at 100, and they're now pushing through to 160. So they're just a couple of big examples that I've been involved in, and deliver enormous amounts of pride. I mean, the whole reason that I went into this many years ago was to help other people,
mm,
and being able to see quantifiable impact, and not just impact on the business. And if I use the example of the client I mentioned that added another $4.5 million to their top line, but that has changed their lifestyle, fundamentally changed their lifestyle. So that's gone above and beyond,
mm.
any sales coaching or leadership coaching. They now have a different lifestyle as a result of that type of impact.
It's incredibly, we should probably put our prices up, shouldn't we, Tony? What do you reckon?
Course, of course we should, and that's one of the things. It's a lot of salespeople are really reluctant to take the price up because there's that scarcity
Yeah.
mindset. I touched on mindset at the start of this conversation, but the scarcity around, oh my gosh, if I take the prices up, they're all going to, run for the hills and they'll leave me. When in fact it's a case of, well, no, be confident that you're taking your price up because you're adding enormous value.
Yeah. Well, I always say if you've got pricing problems, you usually got positioning problems.
Mm,
And
mm,
I try to, it's very obvious for a fact we specialize in the rural sector, you specialize in the SMB sector. And,
mm,
you become the go-to expert, or you work very hard to do that, right? With your case studies and the company you keep.
mm,
I
mm,
mean, like you're saying, I've had clients where we've raised about 11.8 million in the last month of the financial year.
mm,
And then that business was able to go and get funding for 30 million. It's incredible. And
mm.
so, yeah, they didn't pay me much to do that. So yeah, definitely I will be learning from that. But we won't get into how clever and amazing we are. Let's serve our listeners and reward their listening time. Before we move on to leaders, what are the things that you see that you think are so important as attributes for salespeople? Like, and what are they? I know we touched on them, but I want to go a bit deeper on it. Like, what are the things that we talked about persistence, getting used to rejection,
Mhm.
belief, purpose, goals, those things. But when you I assume you might sometimes vet or help recruit people sometimes,
Yeah,
not
I
as a
do. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. So
you can see.
firstly, from a planning point of view, like people need to be incredibly planned. You don't just want to get in your car on a Monday morning, stick the keys in the ignition and just drive in a
Drive
direction.
around. Some people do though, Tony.
I know they do. That's why I'm raising it, you know. So it's about depends upon the product. Do I, you know, what is my route for the day or for the week? Have I got all my promotional materials? Have I got the things that I want to talk about? So you know, getting yourself planned. It's the old adage: if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So it's about spending the time up front. Another trait would be in line with enthusiasm. If you
Mm,
can't be enthusiastic about the thing that you want to sell, the product or the service, then why would I buy from you? So at
mm,
least show some level of
mm,
enthusiasm.
mm,
And going back to the mindset piece, the other one is around not having your emotional well-being determined by the outcome. So I'm very big on discussing lead and lag indicators, and specifically the lead indicators, the things that sit within our control. There are plenty of things that sit outside of our control, and yet so many people get caught up in it. And it affects you. It affects us from a mindset point of view. If someone doesn't buy from me, then all of a sudden I feel incredibly hollow. And if someone buys from me, then I'm high-fiving everybody. And whilst that might be okay, but the reality is, how do I get a little more of, I call it the equilibrium. How do I, you know, instead of having high highs and low lows, how do I get excited? Like, we're not robots, but then also, how do I make sure that when I get a no, then start to understand, well, why do I get a no? And what were the things behind that no? And how do I maybe turn that no into a yes? Or maybe if I can't turn that no into a yes, how do I turn the next one into a yes? You know, it's that constant quest to
mm.
move in a forward direction.
That's quite a rare skill though, that self-coaching. So let's link that to leadership because it's very hard when you're on the road and in our world, you know, out in rural, they're out in the middle of nowhere and I always say everywhere is nowhere. And I say that with love and affection. And they're getting no's, they're getting knockbacks, pushbacks, people are ghosting them, not getting back to them, sorry, can't meet you, mate, you know, trough's broken, cow's broken through gates, or machine's up the shit, or effluent pond, or whatever it is. So there's always something going on. This, you know, the enthusiasm you have, and I think you were very good put a caveat on that. You don't want to be so excitable that you scare everyone off and
No,
a
of course, of
high-pitched
course.
salesy tone. I know you didn't say that, but like you and I both know that.
Yes, yes.
But like coaching yourself is really hard because the human mind, as you know from caveman, doesn't like rejection because, of course, that means getting kicked out of the cave. So this is why we avoid rejection. It's our biological built-in protection system. So how do you start to coach people to get used? Because you got to be so resilient in sales. It's not easy. It's not
No,
getting easy.
it's not easy. But whenever you want to change in anything, St. John, there's two steps. The first step is self-awareness. The second step is taking action. And so go back to what we're talking about here. It's about self-awareness. So there are two questions that I used to ask my team when I was a sales manager many, many years ago. The two questions that I ask myself regularly. I get my clients to ask them. And the first question is, what did I do well? You know, so I could easily get to the end of a call and just think to myself, what did I do well? What were the positives that happened there? And again, go back to, you know, our mind and you know, where it's come from, you know, generations gone by. We want to naturally go towards the negative side because we want to avoid the danger. You know, we want to steer in the opposite direction of all the danger. And so it's very easy for me to sit there and think about all the negative things that happen. When I ask myself what went well, now I'm forcing myself to think about things a little bit differently. I want to focus on gratitude and appreciation. And even though it may have been an average call, and even though I didn't win the business, is there something positive that I can take out of it? That's the first thing. So what went well? The second question is then what can I do differently? I can't change the fact that I had a call then and it was a disaster and I lost the business and they told me to get out of the store or whatever it might have been. I
Yeah.
can't ever change that. Try as I might, I've not been able to figure out how to do that. So then the solution is, well, what can I do differently next time? And so typically, because I have sold, you know, in regional areas back when I was an employee, I used to sell pet food out to the regional areas about 10 hours west of Brisbane. And what I found is that you've got an enormous amount of time between the various towns. And so then it's a case of, well, I've got some reflective time. Now I can always go and put some music on and dance away. Alternatively, I can start to think about what could I do differently?
Yeah. Well, it's terrifying, isn't it? Sometimes that alone time. in your car,
Yeah, I
in your truck. I mean,
know.
a lot
I
of people
know. So I'd much
avoid
rather put
spending time
the
with
music on or
themselves.
the cricket on or whatever it might
Yeah,
be, as
yeah.
opposed to. But again, go back to how I started this particular answer, and that is that if you want to change, if you want a different outcome, then you need to do different stuff. If you want to do the same thing and expect a different outcome, they tell us that's a definition of insanity.
Mm.
Whereas if you want to change, two-step formula, self-awareness, figure out what you're doing well, figure out where you can improve, but then the next step, which is just as important, is you got to do something about it, and so you think about, okay, well, what would you like to do differently? So you start to think about, maybe I would reframe that question, maybe I would ask it differently, maybe I would show up differently, maybe I would get organized, whatever it might be. So then the next call that I do, I can implement it straight away. And that's one of the things that I love about sales, in the sense of that one door may have closed here,
Mm.
and that door may not be closed permanently. It may just be
Right.
closed for now,
Yeah.
but I get another opportunity.
Yeah.
I get another opportunity to go to the next customer and the next customer and the next customer.
Yeah. And I love about sales too. I mean, I've always think sales is about actually helping people rather than to sell to them, or serve
Mm,
to them rather than sell to them.
mm,
The other thing is, you say, it's some doors aren't ready and open now, but they will be open later, as long as you don't burn your bridges.
mm.
And the other thing you said is like the opportunity to go and get the next one, the next one, the next one. If you don't get the one, go and get the lovely thing about sales, it's untapped. Like, there's no limit unless you got a limit on your OTU or your cap and everything else. But I know good salespeople that make more than CEOs and some.
Absolutely. But again, that comes down to the mindset of removing all the limitations. The main limitation that we put on ourselves is our own ceiling. That's the issue.
Yeah.
If we can remove that ceiling, then all of a sudden, the world truly is the oyster.
Yeah, and I think, we talked about reframing, or
Mm,
the posh term is cognitive reappraisal, as the sites call it, but like how you reframe, right, what did I do well, and then what I could do better, or the
mm,
action,
mm, mm,
after action review that military use similarly is
mm,
reflection, taking the time to stop and think and go, right, okay, so I've got a few hours to my next drive or my
mm,
next call.
mm,
What can I learn from this one? What can I improve on the next one? Was there the energy that I showed up? Was I
mm.
listening enough? Was I asking the right questions? Did I meet them where they're at in their brain? All those good things. Now, Tony, I'm desperate to talk about leadership and
Mm,
leading, which is obviously where you really, really kick in as well.
mm.
Um, the whole coaching aspect of leadership. I've had lots of guests on here, and I always ask them the same question. I'm interested how you answer it. It's like, if you're sales manager, this isn't a beat up, but there's a difference between selling, and then there's a difference between managing, and
Mm,
there's a difference between coaching.
mm.
But if you've got a manager that's simply too busy to coach or train their team or do the ride-alongs or windshield time, as our American listeners will say, or ride-alongs or truck time, as we call it in rural, what would you say to them?
Find time.
Mm.
Like,
So
Find,
what do
find
they
time.
say to you? Forgive me, I'm being a pain here. We're doing
No, you're
objections.
right. That's okay.
Um, Yeah, but that's easy for you to say, Tony. I mean, I'm bloody resuscitating marketing, trying to help them. I've got operations, I've got the board breathing down my neck, I've got a churn to. I mean, I'm just rattling them off, but they make time. Tell me more. How do you help them make more time?
Well, time is a priority issue.
Mm.
So if I view training my team as a priority, I will find the time.
Mm.
And people get confused with being busy versus being productive. And the most people that I see are busy. So when you talk about all the things that you did, all those examples, I would argue that, that person is being busy. And also, too, when it's about finding time, it doesn't need to be a 3-hour conversation. It might be a 5-minute touch base. I was doing some coaching this morning, and they're implementing the one-to-ones, and they have been for a little while, and they're so happy because it's just a short, sharp touch base. The employee feels like the owners care about them. They said, we can't believe how important this is to our staff. I said, I told you. And that's the thing. So even though that manager might be, busy, and I've got to do this and I've got to do all these other things, but ultimately they would be responsible for a budget. And would they like to achieve their budget? I think most would say yes. Well, then the way in which I do that is I influence other people around me.
Yeah.
And now, but I've got to make time to be able to do this. Otherwise, nothing's going to change, as opposed to just go and do that thing. It's hang on a second, let's spend time with people. Let's set them up. Let's ensure they have clarity. Let's ensure that they're trained appropriately. And when we do that, then we will have the kind of success that we're chasing.
Love it. I absolutely love it. smiling proudly like a parent, like going, you are so right around making and taking the time to train your team. And if you don't, then you haven't got a time management issue, you've got a priority management, because your priority is actually to make budget. So what would you say to managers that saying, yeah, look, I know I should manage my team and this all makes sense, Tony, and I know there's a correlation between coaching and training my team and making more money, but I still just, yeah, the meetings, I keep missing them and I have to change it. I mean, I'm saying this because I hear this all the time, and I'm sure you do. You
100%.
know, we can drop them. We know this happens. They're like, yeah, I've signed up, and I'm going to be a great student, and I'm going to coach all my team, and but they don't. And then how do you help them realize that it's so important that they make and take time for their team?
Yeah. So, well, the first one is we've got to, as I said, we've got to go and find that time. And so, one of the things that I do, St. John, is do a time audit. Like, let's understand, where are you really spending your time? Like, let's
Love it.
understand, are you being busy, or
Mm,
are you productive? And as I said, in the
mm,
majority of responses, they're actually being busy. So let's see if we can find some time. The other is to help them understand, again, if their KPI, if they're responsible for achieving a number, would it help them to have their staff deliver on their number and play their part? And I would argue the answer is yes. So we need to help them understand the importance of having that meeting. And as I said earlier, it doesn't need to be a 3-hour meeting. Like, I think a lot of people think, oh my gosh, I've got to go and meet that person and it's going to take me forever to go and have that conversation. Or it might be I'm going to get asked something that I don't know the answer to, or they might put me in a spot and I want to avoid that like the plague. But it's
mm,
about getting things done through your team, through your people, starting to work on your business as leaders and owners and getting the team,
mm,
influencing the team. That takes time. But
mm,
again, if you want a different outcome, if you're fed up with not making budget or, getting cross because the team aren't doing the things that you want, frustrated, pulling your hair out, you have to do something different. Otherwise, nothing will ever change.
100%. We don't need to be Billy Einstein to work that out, do we? Like you said before. Now, Australia and New Zealand are very similar. We all sort of, our American friends or UK go, what the hell? Like, you guys like bugger off for like 6 weeks and you never come back. It seems I seem to divide everything by 10, not 12 for my Australian and New Zealand base, because
Right.
everyone's gone to the beach and then disappears. Like, they don't come back till like Australia Day. What's around 27th of Jan? I'm being exaggerated, but people come back and then they do the skeleton and then they go off again because the weather's nice and everything else. The next question around the leadership piece is, we've talked about keeping the momentum, making and taking the time. We've
Mhm.
also said around, are you busy or are you productive? And I say, are you busy doing the right stuff, the wrong stuff? I just laughed when you said time audit, because I do the same. It's like a time diary. Okay, well, let's see where we're leaking that time.
Mm.
So good. And you'll be very proud of me, Tony. I don't need the biscuit, but I was training one team. I do a fractional sales manager role for this particular business, agricultural business. And I said, okay, guys, we're going to have a moment of truth. We're going to share each other's diaries. So it was on a Zoom call. So let's open your diaries, open your Outlook for me. I said, here's mine. And this is what I'm doing. And this is this week. And, it's not beautiful, but it's color coded. And I know exactly what I'm doing. I.e., I run my days. My days don't run me. And same for my weeks and my months and my years. And one of the guys just had like our training and our sales meeting, and the rest of the diary was blank, blank. And this guy was a senior dude. And I was like, what's going on? And we won't mention his name, but I was like, what's going on there? And I sort of met with curiosity. But it's crazy to think managers are fried. They're cooked. They're buggered. They're knackered. But it doesn't need to be that way, does it?
No, look, it doesn't need to be that way. And so it's about, how do I go and rejuvenate? How do I go and, get my levels up? Yes, obviously take a break. But there's other things that you can do. It might be do some exercise, and that doesn't have to be overly strenuous exercise, but look after ourselves, and so health and wellness, and I'm on the other side of 50 now. And I mean, health and wellness is essential, for me to get the best out of me. So whether it be exercise, whether it be nutrition, etc., but also too from a stress point of view. And go back to what I said before, a lot of people just carry things around with them, and they carry it around far too long. And it might be things that, again, I can't change. They'll sit there and dwell on something that happened last week, and they'll start off and that thing will be that big, and then the more you think about it, expands, then it'll be that big, then it'll be this big, and all of a sudden it's this big
It's a
immovable
monster. Yeah.
object that, and
Mm,
so it's not just the physicality side of things to look after yourself, it's also the mental wellness, and
mm,
starting to challenge yourself and go, is that in my control or is it not? And if it's in
mm,
my control, then I'm going to do something about it. And what is
Mm,
that something I'm going to do? But if it's not in my control, why is it that I'm spending all of this time getting
mm,
uptight about it?
mm, mm. I have some guys that moan, and they are predominantly guys, moan and mope about themselves, and I was like, you could spend all that time going back to your prospect list or getting out there and hanging up some influencers or some referrals or some affiliates or business partners that are complementary and going out there, but they wallow and wade in this sort of self-pity and self-loathing. And I mean, I mean that kindly, but they're I'm gonna drop a heavy on the listeners here. I'll see if my friend Tony will agree with it. The reason why they get triggered on loss and rejection is because they've actually rejected themselves by not doing the things they know they should do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it's about what you put out to the world is going to come back your way. I'm a big believer in that, and I'm not
Mm,
sure how woo woo we can get today, but I mean
mm,
it's a case of the law of attraction. If you put good stuff out
mm,
to the world and positivity out to the world and
mm,
enthusiasm and a growth mindset out to
mm,
the world, well, that's going to
mm,
come back your way. But if you whinge and
mm,
whine and carry on, well, that's what's going to come back your way. And so, if you're again go back to what I said earlier, if you're looking for a different outcome, if you're looking for a better outcome, if you're looking to do things easier, more efficient, more effective, have more fun, then you've got to
mm.
do something different. You
Yeah.
cannot sit there and whinge and whine about this and expect it to be different because it will never, ever happen.
I with my training, I talk about, he's either called Bill or Bob. So if you're Bill and Bob listening to this, we don't mean you. This is hypothetical. So let's call it Bob. And Bob is sitting in the training because HR made him,
Hmm.
and he's not happy, and he thinks he's better than he is, but his sales numbers don't back that up because you and I are pros, so we get the numbers before we train people, right? So so we got the right people in the room. Anyway, Bob gets through somehow, and he's in the room, and Bob's pretty resistant and reluctant and not what I call coachable. And what happens is this is what Bob's life looks like. And this is an exaggeration, generalized, but it's fine. He bounces from boss to boss, business to business, partner to partner, and town to
Mm,
town.
mm,
And it's kind of sad to see, Tony? Like,
mm.
really sad to see men or women suffer like that because they cannot see and they can't get out their own mind. They cannot see the things that others see in them, eh?
Well, there's one common denominator to that, and even though they're changing from role to role, leader to leader, company to company, the common denominator is them, and
Mm,
these are not easy conversations, but as leaders, it's about having good, honest conversations. See, the one thing from a leadership point of view, and this applies to, most of the businesses that I've worked in, and even, but even the clients I'm working with today, and that is that we struggle as leaders to have difficult conversations. We want to
mm.
tiptoe around the edges as opposed to having that good, honest conversation with Bob about what's working, but also what are the areas of improvement. And because we don't want to have that conversation, we would much rather avoid it. Then things don't
They
improve.
spiral
In
out, as
fact,
you
they
say.
probably get worse.
Yeah, as you say, they get bigger and bigger and bigger. So your clients, you're obviously a massive advocate of managers making and taking the time to coach their team. There's obviously we can point to all the research. The more you obviously train and coach your team, and we don't have time to go in between the difference between managing and leading and coaching. Maybe we will, but
Hmm.
what are some of the other mistakes that you see sales leaders make? You've got a lot of
Yep.
experience in this
Yeah,
side.
they're,
What
they're not
what
they're
are
not
what
clear.
things? What are the patterns?
They're not clear.
Not
Clarity.
clear.
No, so I'm assuming. So, but I told you once. Why aren't you doing that thing? I remember I told you 6 months ago to do that thing. It's about clarity, and it's about constantly having those conversations. At the highest level, I talk about either clarity or training, St. John. And so the first one is clarity. Does that salesperson understand what they're to do, what their territory is, what their KPIs are? Are they clear on the scripts if we have them, the templates, the products, whatever it might be? That's the first thing. And they either are or they aren't. And remembering too that clarity or communication is two-way. So just because you're a leader and I said to my team member to do the blah, 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 that doesn't
Mm,
guarantee that they haven't interpreted that the way in which you've said. So it's always two-way. Get them to come back to you, paraphrase back to you. The second one then, if they're clear, is training. Where are the
mm.
gaps? There might be 10 things that they need to do and they're competent in 7. Great. Well, let's focus on the 3 that we need to close those gaps. But in answer to your question directly, it's clarity. It happens all the time where people assume that the team members get it and they don't.
What happens? How do you coach your clients through the fact when they keep putting off those difficult conversations? Maybe they're not performing well, or the accountability is not there, and the performance isn't there. They're just underperforming, and they're dragging everyone down. And we can talk about how much your high performers hate that, carrying low performers. But how do you help your managers sort of really get on top of those difficult conversations?
But it's for all the reasons that you said. So highlighting to them that this person is being toxic in the organisation. They're bringing others down. They're not delivering what you need them to deliver on. I mean, that's one of the things that I have always prided myself from a sales point of view is focusing on the metrics. Focusing on the metrics of the thing I love about sales is very quantifiable, and so it's black and it's white. Yes, there's absolutely a quality element to it, but a lot of it starts from a quantifiable point of view. And are they doing the things that we need them to do? Now, if they're not doing the things we need them to do, let's understand why they're not doing those things. What is the roadblock, the blockage that's getting in their way from doing that particular thing? But if you recognize that someone is not good for the team, for other individuals, then you've got to lean into that conversation. And I would think that a lot of managers and owners deep down, St. John, they know. They know that something doesn't feel right. I've constantly got this nagging feeling about that particular individual. I'm just afraid to lean into that conversation. And sometimes, I might turn a blind eye to that person because they might be a great performer in sales. So it actually could be a situation where they're a really great performer, but they're incredibly toxic and white-handing me as a manager, but I might turn a blind eye because they're getting results on the scoreboard. And so that's where I have many sayings, but one is the standard you walk past is the standard you set. And if you allow that to happen, then all of a sudden you're going to allow toxicity into the business, and now your culture is just going to be destroyed.
Yeah. You mentioned around the point around clarity. I wonder if you'd be generous enough, sir, to maybe give the listeners a gift, maybe one question that really helps in that kind of context, where you've got Bob or Bill or Emma or Sue who's not performing to standard. Well, how would you open that conversation, and what's some of the questions or question you might that the listener could use in that
Yeah,
situation?
absolutely. So the framework that I use is GROW. I'm not sure if your listeners are familiar with GROW. So GROW stands for goals, reality, options, and then the W has two words. So it's either way forward and it's willpower. So if I start at the top, so it's always start with the end in mind. So the goal. So what is it that we're hoping to achieve? It might be X number of calls. It might be a sales target. It might be, whatever our goal is. Let's start with that. The reality is, hey, here's where I want you to be, but here's where you are. And so let's talk about the reality of where they are. The O is then the options. So now this is where you are. This is where I want you to be. Can you think of some ways that you can go from point A to point B? And start to get the employee to come up with some ideas, some options to get them along the journey. The W, as I said, has got two meanings. So the first one is, well, hey, you may have come up with three options. Fantastic. Which one of those will you do first? We can't do them all at the same time, but which one will you choose first? The other W is about will or about motivation. So is there anything else that might get in your way from achieving that particular plan? Because you can have a plan, like you can have the most amazing comprehensive plan, but if you still don't take action on that plan, then nothing's going to change. So it's about goal, reality, options, way forward, and then will.
I love that framework. I'd never heard it before. I love it. Absolutely love it. Now, Tony, what do you do to keep yourself sharp? And like me, you got to read a lot. You got to be coached a lot. You got to spend a lot of your hard-earned money backing yourself. What do you do to make sure you stay match fit, let's say?
Yeah, so I've got a morning routine. I meditate in that routine, so that's incredibly important to me. So very much around getting my mind right. Physically, I'm quite fit. So earlier this year, I did a 6-week challenge in my local gym, and I won that challenge. In fact, smashed
Good
it.
man.
So yeah, absolutely. So so I did that. So I still do weight training, etc. Now, so that's on the mental and on the physical side, and constantly updating myself with what's going on. So at the moment, for example, I'm doing a lot of research information around AI and how that can help all of us and what that does. So I find that incredibly fascinating. I think it's important that you're constantly growing that whole growth mindset, because AI, we didn't really talk about it up until probably 12, 18 months ago, and now all of a sudden it's in all of our lives. But I mean, most people that I come across think about it as simply ChatGPT and rewriting an email, and so then it's a case of it's so much deeper
More of
than
that,
that. Yeah, of course, and so that's incredibly important to me, is to make sure that I do that. On top of that, I'm constantly networking, so networking is a very big part of my business, and not so much from, yes, it helps me from growing my business, but I just love meeting people. I love to hear their stories, a bit like this podcast that you've created. I love to hear their stories, and I can learn from people. In fact, I do learn from people all the time. I learn a lot from my clients and different things, because I've got all my clients are at different stages, and so sometimes there'll be clients who are doing amazing things, and it's like, great, well, that's something that I can go and implement with these other clients over here.
Yeah. So tell me, what are some of the best sales books you've read or liked most, your go-tos?
So Brian Tracy is one.
Yeah.
It's an oldie, but a goodie. That's incredibly
Very good.
important to me. So that's been a good one. Zig Ziglar as
Yeah.
well is someone that I've followed over the years. So they're probably the two big ones. I'm also working for some of the world's largest businesses. I was very fortunate to be well trained through there. So I work for one of the world's largest FMCG, fast moving consumer goods businesses. I work for one of the world's largest pharmaceutical businesses. Both had their different styles, but I've been able to pull those bits from there as well. And also too, in those businesses, I work with some incredibly smart individuals, and even though I wanted to go out on my own and do my own thing, I was very blessed and grateful for the people that I was working with and work for.
Now, with the pharmaceutical business and the FMCG business, maybe you're such a polite fellow. In rural, we just, we hit it straight. The learning management systems, and they say, "Oh no, we've already got to." I mean, this won't be so much in your world now, but back in the corporate day, I mean, if you're a Xerox, a Fuji Xerox, or a Canon, the photocopier sales, and I don't mean to be the yucky nature of that. They actually were great training universities, those businesses. But with your pharmaceutical background and your FMCG background, did they have learning management system, LMS? Did they have intranet training, or what was it like? What did they teach
No,
you?
no, not at all. So, in fact, it was very much delivered in person. That's how the training went. So there's a lot of time spent up front, depending upon which, if I talk about the pharmaceuticals, depends upon which division within the pharmaceuticals. There's a lot of time spent on the products, the various, prescription products, etc. So there's a lot of time spent understanding the ins and outs of that. But also just from a sales training point of view, it was all done in person. So there wasn't any LMS system back then. What we did do, however, is we used to, so every 2 months we would release our next focus, our cycle focus, and we started to record that. So, for example, if I was going to go and sell a new line in, or if that one was one of the objectives, to sell a new line into a pharmacy, then what we would do is we'd do some role playing, record it, and then we'd put that into a shared folder. So that was about the extent of the learning management system back then. Today it's very different, but back then it was very much in person, or we pushed into the video space.
What would your advice be to someone saying, right, this bloke's obviously, he's been around a lot, he's saying a lot of good stuff. What would you say to them in terms of, you and I, as professionals, we have to make and take the time to train and to be coached and to learn and to read and all those things. And that involves a lot of sacrifice. I don't think I'll be seeing you playing Candy Crush on a plane, or me, or watching the movies. You'll be reading a book, or you'll be writing, or I'm assuming you'll be doing something a bit more practical, because we're only as good as our skill set, right? Because more skills pay more bills. But what would you say to someone that said, "Oh yeah, but that's fine too, but I just don't have time to learn. I just don't have time to read the books and all that stuff." And
Well,
what would you say?
here's the great thing about 2025 is that you can consume information in so many different ways. There was no, audio books back then, so not a lot of people like to read. People don't like to read. That's fine.
Mm,
Consume it through audio. If you like to
mhm,
watch things, get on a YouTube clip. I mean, there's so much stuff that you can get for free nowadays. So again, it comes down to what we talked earlier on. It's about finding the time. Like, where there's a will, there's a way. If you want to improve, if you want to get a better outcome, if you want to build a career, have better results, it is endless from a knowledge point of view. The difficulty is the application of the knowledge, but it is endless from a knowledge point of view. I just touched on AI. Go into AI and type in whatever it is that you want. Hey, I'd like to build a sales career. What are the 5 things that I need to do to be able to do that? There's so many ways that you can consume information.
I was just, while you were saying that, remind me of this beautiful quote by Naval Ravikant. He's one of the Silicon Valley guys. He has a beautiful book over here called The Almanac of Naval Ravikant. It says, free, and it's exactly what you're talking about, Tony. It's like free education is abundant all over the internet. It's the desire to learn that is scarce.
That's
You know,
100%.
it's so true. There's no excuse. You can, where it's podcasts or your resources, your books or mine, of course, there's so much out there and so many abilities to actually absorb that training. It's like, I just think the world is not becoming easier. Particularly if you're starting out. We've touched on AI. I'm asking a lot of my guests about AI at the moment. What are your views on AI? Your research? What are you seeing, Tony? What are you thinking? What are your thoughts?
Look, I'm always a glass half full kind of guy. It's exciting. I'm so excited. Will there be changes? Of course there'll be changes. Will there be different jobs? Of course there'll be different jobs. But there was different jobs when we introduced the computer. There was different jobs when we went from horse and cart to cars. So there's always going to be evolution into the future. But here's one of the beautiful things about humans is that we adapt. And even though initially it might seem a bit scary to some people, but we will adapt and we will figure it out. And so I would say from an AI point of view, lean into that, learn from it. How can it make my life easier? How can it help me be a better version of myself? Because it can. It's like anything. When you use it for good, then so many good things can come from it.
Yeah. Brilliant, brilliant. Tony, I've really enjoyed this. I'm on this chat. So I always ask my guests this, my loyal listeners understand this. If there's one, and you might have covered it already, but I think repetition is the mother of all learning, and all good reps do the reps, right? And it helps us learn by repetition and neural pathways, all those good things. The question is, if you were only able to give someone one piece of advice about how to be effective in sales, what would that advice be and why?
The advice would be in regards to the mindset around sales. And the reason being is that I believe firmly that our largest contributing factor for our success in sales, in business, in life is our mindset. Again, go back to what we just said a moment ago around knowledge. There is no shortage of knowledge. It is there. It is abundant. It is everywhere that I can think of. It's the mindset. It's the ability to keep going. I call it your map, your mindset, your attitudes, and your psychology, and really
Mm,
focus heavily on your map and spend time because yes, there's knowledge, yes, there's skills, but it's that ability to keep going when you've had that tough day, when you've been told no, when you're maybe feeling a bit dusty or a bit unwell or whatever it is. What's the thing? What's the thing that keeps you going? And that's that ability to just push, keep pushing through. So I would say really work hard on your mindset. That is the number one skill when it comes to selling or business generally.
if there's someone that's listening to this podcast right now, they're in their truck, they've lost a deal, or they're in a bit of a sales rut, or they're getting price. If you could talk to that person right now, what would you say to them?
I would say what went well. So think about, was there any positives that came from it? The other is, can you think about what would do differently? Now, if you can't think about what you would do differently, seek out. We just talked about, so maybe it's go to ChatGPT and type in, hey, I lost this business. This is what happened. What do you suggest I do? So, but it's always about, yes, that may have happened, but you can't change that that's happened. It's happened. You lost that business. They said no to you. They slammed their door in the face, whatever it was. Can you learn from it? Of course you can. We can all learn from it. And that's the beauty, is that we get another shot at this, right? Until until the end, we get another shot at it. And it's like, keep moving in a forward direction. Yes, it hurts. It hurts if you have a loss or things don't go your way, but the ability to rebound as quickly as you can, again, that comes back to the mindset side of things. Like, okay, well, I'm going to dust myself off and move on. And I learnt this actually through McDonald's, funnily enough, many years ago. So when I was a manager at McDonald's, and I used to teach you, and they say, well, when someone comes up to the counter, 'cause they used to come to the counter back then, it's a bit different today, but they'd come up to the counter and that person was about to hand over their hard-earned money. It didn't matter what was going on in your life. It didn't matter that things were happening for you. It didn't matter that you had a confronting situation with a customer before. That particular customer is about to invest their hard earned in you. You need to provide them with the most wonderful, positive experience. And so
Mm,
that stuck with me forever. It's like, well, you're right. Even though I might have a sales call and that didn't work out, I go to my next prospect. And if I take the negativity and the pessimism from that previous call, and if I take that into this next call, well, the likelihood of success is incredibly low. Versus I go, okay, well, how do I compartmentalize this? And again, these are not easy skills, but there's certainly skills that you can learn. How do I compartmentalize this to dust
mm.
myself off, to pick myself up and go, right, I'm going to go into this next call, and this is going to be the most amazing call of the day.
Sounds like my golf game you just described there, Tony.
Well,
Like
that's the
from
thing with golf. The thing with golf is you have one great shot, and it's like, rightio, that's all I
well,
need.
it's
Come
over
come back
back.
next weekend.
Same
Even
with
though
tennis. This is why it's like, why do they bounce their ball so much or play around with their towel or their racket? They're buying themselves time and recalibrating. Tony, last questions, I promise. How have you, at the tender age of just over 50 now, because you're very similar age to me, how have you trained your brain?
through really challenging experiences and through getting out of my comfort zone. So I used to be petrified to speak in front of people. Long, long time ago, I speak in front of hundreds of people nowadays, but I'm going back a while, and I realized early on that in order for me to have a career and to be able to lead a team, I had to go and speak in front of people. And how was I going to do it? By actually putting on my boots and my socks and actually speaking in front of people, and that was it. And so you've got to be able to do the thing, and it's not easy. It wasn't easy. There was plenty of times when I would be awash with anxiety, petrified. After the speech, I would need to find a quiet place just to rejuvenate.
Mm,
But I did it, and I did it. And, we all have our comfort zone. And when you start to do things on the outside of your comfort zone, all of a sudden your comfort zone gets a little bit bigger. Then it gets a
yeah.
little bit bigger. Then it gets a little bit bigger. And so it's about leaning to things that scare you. And one of the reasons, if I could leave this with the listeners, it's about having goals that are bigger than your fears. We all
Mm,
have fears. As humans, we all have human frailties. We all have fears. I had a massive fear to speak in front of people, but my goal was way, way bigger than my fear, and I did it. And even though I was, as I said, incredibly anxious, I did it. And then when you do those sorts of things, St. John, you then go, hang on a second.
I
If I
can
can
do that.
do that, I
What
can
else
go
could
and
I
do
do?
I can go and do this
Yeah.
other stuff. And now you've got this belief starting to happen as well.
I really think that's a beautiful place to end the conversation on for today on like setting your goals bigger than your fears. I think that's an absolute gift, and well done you. Tony, you've been an absolute gent. Where can people find out more about you, follow you, connect you, maybe download some of your resources like all us good guys do? Where do they go?
Yes, I've got a website, tonymeredithcoaching.com.au. I'm all over social media. So Tony Meredith Coaching on all your platforms, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, wherever there's socials. One of the things I learned early on is that I needed to do a lot of video to be able to differentiate myself. And so there's an enormous amount of video out there. YouTube as well. I should have mentioned that. So yeah, just you can Google me up and there'll be something that appears from somewhere.
Brilliant, Tony. Thank you for giving us your time, sharing your wisdom. When Tony and good guests like come onto this show, I don't give them the questions that I'm going to ask them. I just fire the questions at them, and you've got to be pretty cool to take the question. Not because the questions are any amazing, but it's like there's no script here. We're not following a script. So, Tony, thank you for being so generous. Thank you for helping people. That's why we do. That's what the good guys like you and I do. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing your time and being so generous.
Well, thank you for your opportunity and to share with your listeners, and I really appreciate it. And like you said, you don't provide the scripts. I run a podcast and I give my guests the script, and I said to my assistant, can you reach out and get the script? And she came back and said, there's no script. It's like, oh my
That's
God,
it. We don't do
okay.
scripts. We just have a conversation. We're having
But again, go back to what I said a moment ago, which is, lean into those things. Go, okay, this is going to be exciting, because I could have easily said to myself, oh my gosh, and got myself into a state of anxiety and worry about it. But I said, you know what, this is going to be exciting. I'm looking forward to the thrill and the fun that Sinjin and I are going to have together. And it's been a great conversation. So thank you.
I love it. No, you're welcome. And I mean, again, just for the listeners, like, that's uncomfortable sometimes, but I always say discomfort's where the growth comes from. And Tony talks around your comfort zone, and then just stepping outside there a little bit more. Doesn't need to be massive shifts, but little things. And I'm the same. I used to hate public speaking, and I don't like myself on video, and I don't like my own voice. But in order to serve people, help people, impact people, you got to do that. So Tony, thank you for fronting up, and thanks for putting up with my non-scripts.
Fantastic. Thanks, Sinjin.
Awesome.